So that was really important testimony. She's just identified the defendant, Melly, getting into the rear driver's side seat. This is a witness that you don't want to beat up on. This is the mother of a slain young man.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, coming to you with my pearl handle pistol cufflinks, graciously gifted to me by our content genius, Michael Rivers. And again, I am board certified in the area of criminal defense, and I'm going to be reacting here to an update in the YNW Melly trial, closing out another week. And there's just hundreds of photographs, there's videos, there's witness testimony, there's arguments about this and that. The state's trying to get people subpoenaed, and they can't do it. And so we're going to listen to some arguments here. Before we get to that, this episode is brought to you, like all the episodes are brought to you, by eSign.com. eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. So what you do is you go to eSign.com, you download the app, you get 3 free signatures a month, and now you can control your father's estate. That doesn't mean you get to go buy a Ferrari. No, because you still have to use fiduciary responsibility, but you can get it done. Your lawyer can draft the documents and send it to you, e-sign, because if it's not e-sign, no one signs. I use it all the time in my practice when somebody can't come into the office, or just it's more convenient, and to get it done quickly. eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. There's been a motion by the defense to not have family members identify the decedents. The decedents, I mean, it's just a fancy way of saying the people who died. And the reason behind that is it's frowned upon because they can get too emotional, and if it's too emotional, that it affects the jury too much, then it could trigger a mistrial. So let's kind of watch a little bit of that argument, and then we'll go into what she testifies to, because it's pretty, it really kind of dovetails into what we talked about yesterday.
Offering to you what we've done.
What? I'm sorry.
If you recall the arguments previously when the defense cited the case law, Your Honor was asking us what efforts we've made to utilize a non-family member for purposes of identification of decedents. So we have at this point subpoenaed multiple witnesses, including, for instance, Travion Glass, who's refused to come to testify. We've also subpoenaed Patrick DeLoach, who has had.
So a lot of the witnesses don't want to come, and they don't want to be part of this. Why don't they want to be a part of it? Because when it really comes down to it, this is a gang hit. I mean, it may or may not be a gang hit for the purpose of the trial itself, but when you have this kind of activity going down, people are scared. People are just generally afraid anyway, because when you have these kind of homicides, there is fallout, and there already has been a little bit of fallout.
Subpoenaed Frito Bang, whose legal name is Frederick Gibbons.
Let's talk about witnesses for a second. You get a subpoena, and a subpoena is a court order. So if you don't show up to court, you can get arrested because you're essentially in contempt of court. You get to court, you don't want to testify because you're scared. Well, guess what? They can hold you in jail until you testify.
He has refused to comply with subpoenas, and his attorney, Danica Davis, who had previously accepted service on his behalf, has now no longer accepted service on his behalf, so we're unable to bring him in. And there was an additional witness who we have not been able to serve, Jacoby Mills, we have not been able to serve. At this point, the state is re-arguing and requesting that the court allow us to use the family members as the only credible witnesses that the state has to identify the decedents. Today.
So the judge, in making this determination, has to decide, the balance. The state needs the evidence because they have to identify who these people are. They got to be real people, right? But it can't be so overwhelmingly prejudicial. So one of the things the state can do to try to quell the fears of the court is work with your witnesses to make sure and prep them so that they don't get overly emotional on the stand.
Specifically, we could call Leandra Phillips, one for the purpose of identification, but also for other testimony. That's relevant to the case.
Thank you.
Your Honor,
And so that Phillips he's talking about, she's the mother of YNW Juvy.
We find it to be disingenuous.
So here's the one thing that I don't do. I don't constantly attack the other side. Unless it's warranted. If it's warranted, you fucking go after them. But if you go after it every single time, it loses its effectiveness. I'm not saying he's doing that too much, just a stylistic point.
To make the argument that witnesses that the state has been unable to contact for the last 3 years, and they know they have, to say, but we really have been trying while we've been in trial, as though those 4 people who they know to be unavailable are the people that comprise the universe of people that can identify the 2 decedents. That's clearly not the case. For there to be a good effort, a good faith effort to identify somebody who's not a family member, they should maybe broaden their search to somebody that the family might know, maybe a very...
So it's not a hard and fast rule. It might be frowned upon, but it's not like it's not done.
distant relative, something of that nature, as opposed to the 4 witnesses that they know that they have been unable to reach for 3 to 4 years. To now come and say, we're really still trying to reach them, Judge, is not...
And see, this kind of stuff is a little bit boring in a sense, but it is, it's each one is a block, you know, each one's a building block. So the state has an enviable job of, you know, especially when they don't have a direct witness at this point, to present things that are foundational. And you have a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Then at the end, after you put all this shit in, creates this bigger picture.
Passing the hurdle of good faith effort to find somebody other than a family member to testify. That is assuming that these are the only 4 people they know. And they already know that they can't find these people because they haven't been able to find them for 4 years. So to now come and say, we still can't find them, but we really have tried for the last 2 weeks, is not moving the ball an inch.
In addition to that, Your Honor,
Yes.
in addition to that, Trevon Glass is scheduled for a deposition tomorrow. The state...
See, they don't want the family to testify because they don't want the emotional impact that might have on the jury.
Informed us just recently, during the lunch break, that they anticipate he'll be here for deposition. So it's a little immature for them to bring up... Premature. I'm immature. To bring that up now.
Hey, Counsel, have you discussed with your witnesses the possibility of identifying their family members?
Yes, Judge. In fact, that was the reason we sought out Trevon Glass after obtaining a new address. We specifically told him that we would only be calling him for the purpose of victim identification. He said even that he would not be willing to come and testify due to safety concerns. If Your Honor also recalls Ms. Bradley, when Felicia Holmes was on the stand, she indicated that although she had met the decedents, that she was unable to...
All right, so now they called Juvy's mom. So let's kind of watch her testimony. This is going to be interesting. That's at 4:41:24.
Can you state your name, your full legal name for the jury?
Leon Phillips.
Okay. And are you related to one of the decedents in this case?
Yes, I am.
How so?
I'm his mother.
And who is that?
Christopher Thomas.
And you have previously been shown outside the presence of the jury a photograph with ME number 18-3119. And that was a head photograph. It's now in evidence under States 75. And I believe it's photograph number 4.
One of the things that you have in all homicide cases, you know, you're going to have pictures of dead bodies. And some are worse than others. Some are natural causes, well, not natural causes because it wouldn't be a homicide otherwise. But some aren't that bad because they're like either drug overdose or that kind of thing. But some are shootings and some are just beatings. And so, you know, there's a balancing test that the court has to do in allowing these photos to the jury. And they go back in the jury room with them.
Who was that? Were you able to view that photograph?
That was my son.
If you recall, we showed it to you previously, the headshot with the medical examiner's number. Who was that in that photograph?
Christopher Thomas, my son.
Okay. And also, publishing states 7.
When she says publishing, so they probably stipulated as to certain evidence, and so these photographs are already in evidence. And so to publish it means you're going to show it to the jury. In other words, put it on the big screen. Now, this is critical. This is the surveillance video outside of the studio. It's pretty good video. That looks like Melly there, doesn't it? That's Melly coming out, I'm pretty sure, in that kind of purplish jacket. And watch where Melly gets in. Now, the green car is the car that they were in. Watch where he goes to sit. He gets in the rear driver's side seat.
Positive 21915. Ms. Phillips, did you see who entered into the occupants who entered into that gray Jeep? And is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you recognize where your son entered that gray Jeep?
Yes.
Which seat, if you can identify for the jury?
He got in the back seat on the right hand side.
And this all dovetails nicely together.
Did you recognize the individual that got into the back seat on the left side, the rear driver's side?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Jamel.
And Jamel, is that the defendant, Jamel Demons?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know him?
So now she's just identified the defendant, Melly, getting into the rear driver's side seat. And remember that, and when you can't listen to this testimony without remembering, other parts of the testimony. That's why it's really important to take all the evidence as a whole and remember all the testimony of the expert on the shooting and where the trajectory of the bullets were and the type of wounds that occurred and where everybody was seated.
By another name.
Melly.
And do you see Melly Jamel Demons in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
And do you identify him by an article of clothing and where he's sitting in the courtroom?
He's sitting over there. He had a tuxedo. Or I think it was first.
Okay. Your Honor, let the record reflect the identification of the defendant by this witness.
The record shall so reflect the in-court identification of the defendant.
Nothing further.
So that was really, 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 really important testimony. It wasn't overly emotional, and she didn't even identify the autopsy photos, but really important because that places her son in the back seat with Melly, and you take that with the transportation or the expert on the trajectory of the bullets, hard to combat that.
Ms. Phillips, we want to express our condolences to you.
This is a witness that you don't want to beat up on. This is the mother of a slain young man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing further this week.
Thank you. Step down. Thank
So he didn't ask any questions. And why didn't he ask it? Why didn't the defense ask any questions? There's no question that he could have asked her on that topic that would even touched her at all. So all he would do if he asked her any questions, he would alienate the jury. So all he did was, "We're sorry for your loss." That's the only thing he could do. That's pretty short and sweet.
Judge, can we approach?
When you hear lawyers say, "Can we approach?" that means the jury's sitting there, and we don't want the jury to hear what we're about to talk about. And it's very, very common. Sometimes judges say, "No, you cannot." In other words, they want to keep the trial moving along. And sometimes they put on what they call white noise. It's a kind of like the sound of a TV without a signal, and back in the day. And they do that so that the jury can't hear what the conversation is. So now here's another thing that is very interesting about what's going to happen next. So one of the things you just saw was a surveillance video showing the 4 guys getting into the car and their various positions. One of the things that the jury is going to do is that I believe they're going to get a viewing of the vehicle itself. That is huge. So you went from somebody talking about, the various angles of the bullets and where things could come from, somebody identifying with a surveillance video of where this, where everybody was seated. Now they're going to be able to see the vehicle itself. And one of the things that struck me about this case is that, think about this. Melly's in the back seat. 3 shots. 3 fatal shots. Pop, pop, pop. It has to happen really flippin' fast. Because you would think if I'm Melly and I take my gun and I'm pointed at the right front passenger seat, the front passenger seat, this guy could easily just grab me like that, right? And this is close quarters. So it had to happen really fast. And it's a semi-automatic. It's not a wheel gun like this. So you look at some of these photos, they're going to be able to basically peer into the vehicle and take a hard and close look at where these 2 men died and how they died. And and I think it'll be powerful. That's really, really powerful evidence. So far, it seems like boring, but it's not. It's very, very powerful evidence that they put together so far. All the dowels, the injuries that aren't bleeding, the position of the people in the car, the phone and the ownership of the phone, showing the location of whoever is using that phone, and then the lies that Bortland told at the ER. So it's all kind of building. The one thing I haven't heard yet, we did have a little gang expert testimony, but connecting this to gang activity. If it's just a beef between 2 guys, that's not death penalty material. But if it's gang related, then it is. So this has just been our quick update on the Melly trial. These aren't funny videos. It's a double homicide. And it's a very, very difficult task for the defense to poke holes and everything. And like I said, there wasn't anything he could do with Thomas's mom, with Juvy's mom. Nothing he could do with her. So he doesn't ask a question. And you don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. So you're better off just backing. And knowing when not to ask a question is just as important as to know when to ask a question. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer with our content genius and the person who's completely in charge of everything I do and say, Michael Rivers. Give him a shout-out because he's so flippin' awesome. And we have fun doing this together. It's really fun to have a father and son. This is our father-son project. And so it's, we get together a few times a week. We do film these videos. We have dinner once in a while. And I encourage you to do the same. It builds relationships and it builds trust. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers. We'll see you next time. And make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon. And we'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer React.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
23-hour lockdown, police is at my call.